Kristi Noem walked into that hearing room thinking she had all the answers. She had her talking points. She had her legal team. She had months of preparation behind her. And then a senator put a single photograph on a screen. One image, one number, and the room she thought she controlled completely fell apart. This is the story of how a $70 million jet ended Kristi Noem's carefully constructed defense. Not in a courtroom, not in a criminal proceeding, in a congressional hearing room, in front of the entire country, on live television. And what made it so devastating wasn't just the jet itself. It was what she said after she saw the photo. Because here's what nobody is telling you completely. The jet was just the beginning. Behind that one image was a web of contracts, connections, and cover stories that prosecutors are now calling potential perjury. And by the time this is over, you'll understand why the most powerful cabinet secretary in Washington just became the most legally exposed one. Let's go back to March 3rd, 2026, Senate Judiciary Committee, oversight hearing on the Department of Homeland Security. The room was already tense. 2 American citizens had been shot and killed by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. Noem had called them domestic terrorists without evidence. Multiple senators from both parties had already called for her resignation. This wasn't going to be a friendly hearing, but Noem came in composed, confident. She sat down, adjusted her microphone, and prepared to do what she's always done: deflect, redirect, survive. Then Senator Sheldon Whitehouse stood up. He didn't start with immigration. He didn't start with the Minneapolis shootings. He held up a photograph of the interior of a private jet, not just any jet, a $70 million aircraft purchased by the Department of Homeland Security. And in the photograph, there was a bedroom on a deportation plane. Whitehouse let the image sit on the screen for a moment. He let the room absorb it, and then he asked the question that froze everything. What kind of deportee justifies being flown out of the country in a luxury jet with a bedroom? The room erupted, not with applause, with the sound of something cracking. Because that question wasn't just about a jet, it was about the entire justification Noem had been selling for months. She had stood before the American people and said this was about border security, about protecting communities, about serious enforcement. She had watched 2 American citizens get killed by her agents and called them terrorists. She had defended every aggressive, chaotic, legally contested action her department had taken, all in the name of necessity, all in the name of America's safety. And here was a $70 million jet with a bedroom. Noem's response came quickly, too quickly. She said the photograph wasn't accurate, that the bedroom was being removed, that the jet was being refurbished, that it would be used for deportation flights along with executive travel. She said she had only been on the plane once. That answer created 3 new problems in the space of 30 seconds. First, the photograph was real. It had been reported by NBC News and verified before the hearing. When a secretary of a department tells a Senate committee that documented photographic evidence is not accurate, that's not a defense. That's a statement on the record that prosecutors can now compare against everything else. Second, she said it would be used for executive travel. Executive travel. Her travel. On a $70 million plane with a bedroom that she described as being removed, while her agency was partially shut down, while TSA workers weren't being paid, while FEMA was operating without full funding, while the Coast Guard had budget gaps. That's the context she was asking the Senate to fund around. Third, and this is the part that matters most, she said she had nothing to do with acquiring it. That career employees made those decisions. That she followed proper processes, that she wasn't involved. That's the exact same answer she gave about the $220 million advertising contract. Let's talk about that contract, because this is where the hearing stopped being about a jet and became something much larger. Senator after senator brought it up. $220 million in DHS contracts awarded for advertising campaigns. Campaigns that prominently featured Noem herself. And the firm that received a lucrative subcontract? It was run by Ben Yoho, the husband of Tricia McLaughlin, the former chief spokesperson for DHS who had just left her post. Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana, laid it out methodically. He told Noem his research showed the contracts were not properly bid out. He told her one firm had been selected just 11 days after it was formed. 11 days. He looked at her and said, the $220 million price tag troubles me, especially when Congress is scratching for every penny. And Noem said the exact same thing she said about the jet. I had nothing to do with picking those contractors. We followed proper processes. Career employees made those decisions. She used the same defense twice in the same hearing for two completely separate scandals. That's not a coincidence. That's a strategy. And now that strategy is under federal scrutiny. Because here's what happened after the hearing ended. Democratic leaders from both the House and Senate Judiciary Committees referred Kristi Noem to the Department of Justice for investigation into potential perjury. Potential perjury for statements made under oath in those 2 days of testimony on March 3rd and 4th. The referral didn't come from nowhere. It came from senators and representatives who watched her answers in real time and then compared them to the documented record. The same way they compared her statement about the Minneapolis shootings to the video evidence. She told the committee she was relaying accurate information from agents on the ground. CBP and ICE officials had already testified under oath that they never told her Alex Pretty was a domestic terrorist. 2 sworn testimonies. Direct contradiction. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a problem. And now federal investigators are holding Noem's words up against everything she said. About the jet, about the contracts, about the shootings, about what she knew and when she knew it. The woman who walked into that hearing room with all the answers is now someone who gave every answer on the record. And records don't disappear. But there's something the coverage keeps missing. Something that explains why this hearing felt different from the beginning. It wasn't just Democrats going after a Trump cabinet secretary. It was members of her own party. Senator Thom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, took his entire allotted time and did something almost unheard of. He didn't ask questions. He delivered a performance evaluation. He looked at Kristi Noem directly and called her leadership a disaster. He said, time after time, I've been disappointed. He said, you have demonstrated anything but exceptional leadership. He vowed to block presidential nominees and bring Senate business to a halt until she answered his questions. A Republican senator in a Republican-controlled Senate, calling a sitting Republican cabinet secretary a disaster to her face on live television. That moment matters more than anything Democrats said that day, because it tells you the crisis inside DHS isn't just partisan noise. It's institutional. It's operational. Senators who depend on this agency working are watching it fall apart, and they're saying so on the record. 2 American citizens are dead, shot by federal agents. Their names are Alex Pretty and Renee Good. Pretty was an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Noem called him a domestic terrorist on national television before any investigation was complete, before any evidence was reviewed. She said it because agents on the ground told her. Except agents on the ground testified they never said that. Miramar Martinez was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent in Chicago. She was a U.S. citizen. She sat in the gallery of the Senate hearing room while Noem testified she wasn't familiar with the details of her case. Martinez had been covered in every major national outlet for months. Her case had been investigated, reported, and litigated publicly. And the Secretary of Homeland Security sat under oath and said she didn't know the details. That answer is now in the DOJ referral. Here's what this all adds up to. A $70 million jet with a bedroom, a $220 million advertising contract connected to her inner circle, 2 American citizens dead and labeled terrorists without evidence, ICE violating federal court orders over 200 times in a single federal district, a Republican senator calling her tenure a disaster, a perjury referral filed with the Department of Justice. This isn't a hearing that produced one bad moment. This is a hearing that produced a documented record of contradictions, each one now sitting in a federal file being reviewed by investigators. Noem left Capitol Hill that week the same way she arrived, projecting calm, projecting confidence, saying the right things to the right cameras. She's been doing this her entire career. It has worked before, but there's a difference between political controversy and a DOJ perjury referral. There's a difference between bad optics and a sworn statement that contradicts other sworn statements. There's a difference between surviving a bad news cycle and having your words locked permanently into a federal investigation. The $70 million jet was the moment the room erupted. But the jet isn't the story. The story is what she said when she saw that photo. What she said about the contracts, what she said about the shootings, what she said about what she knew. All of it is on the record now. All of it is being compared to everything else. And somewhere in Washington right now, investigators are doing exactly what that senator did in that hearing room. They're holding up one image at a time and asking a very simple question. Is this what you told us? The answer to that question is going to define everything that comes next. Stay close, because the next filing in this case is coming faster than anyone expects, and when it drops, you'll want to have seen this first.